because I've been part of Big Team Science for a little bit, and I'm part of the majority world. As we all know, most Big Team Science are being led by people, researchers that are from the minority world or are living in the minority world. And I wanted to highlight these wonderful people that you have in front of you. Dr. Adeyemi Adetula, Dr. Paola Giusti-Rodriguez, Dr. Iris Žeželj, and the newly minted PhD candidate, Amelia Ibarra. So without further ado, I want to take a brief time to show the agenda that we're going to do. I'm going to introduce these wonderful people that you have in front of you. Then we will take a few minutes, about 2 to 3 minutes, to talk about barriers, where I will give you some questions. As Big Team Science leaders, then some unique opportunities that you think you had because you are living in, or both, in the majority world. And most importantly, I want to highlight the ways forward. How can we make this better from the majority world, but how can people from the minority world help us out a little bit more? So with that said, we're going to go, I think, in alphabetical order. And I will begin with an introduction. Dr. Adeyemi Adetula is a Nigerian experimental forensic and social psychologist interested in social behaviors, big team science, replication, and meta research. He completed his PhD, I will not try to pronounce that in French, at the University of Grenoble-Alpes, working on increasing generalizability of psychology by including Africans. He is currently a lecturer and a research scientist at the Alex Ekwueme Federal University in Nigeria. He is an advocate for open science and big team science to improve research, generalizability, and credibility in Africa, as well as to improve Africans' participation in global research. He is currently a lead researcher at Many Labs Africa, where he is leading a series of multi-site studies to replicate African effects among other African, European, and North American populations. Dr. Paola Giusti-Rodriguez earned a BS in biology at the University of Puerto Rico, Rio Piedras. She completed her PhD in cell and developmental biology at Harvard University, where her doctorate research focused on studying the molecular basis of neurodegeneration. She's currently a professor at the University of Florida. Her work lies at the intersection between neuroscience and functional genomics, and she aims to integrate the tools and techniques of these fields to shed light on the genetics of neuropsychiatric disorders. She is one of the co-founders and member of the executive committee of the Latin American Genomics Consortium, which seeks to promote the practice of psychiatric genetic research in hopes to understanding the genetic makeup of Latin America. Through this research and collaborations, because I am part of it, we hope to uncover the unique genetic elements of psychiatric disorders through Latin Americans. Dr. Iris Žeželj is a full professor of social psychology at the University of Belgrade, Serbia, and a member of the LIDA lab. She gained her PhD in 2012, same year I did. Her main area of interest is social cognition, specifically biases in memory, self-knowledge, and group perception, as well as in intergroup relationships. She has led and co-led international research projects on attitude change, intergroup relations, social identity. She is currently preoccupied with the epistemology suspect beliefs, especially in the domain of health and the relationship to questionable health practices that can be deceptive or downright dangerous. Within that line, she was a head researcher of the Health Quest project, where she presented yesterday her results, which brought together researchers from 33 countries to investigate intentional non-adherence to medical advice and the use of traditional complementary and alternative medicine. Finally, Amelia is a clinical psychology graduate student. She completed her BA in psychology at the University of Sonora in Hermosillo, Sonora, Mexico. Her research interests are focused on Hispanic Latinx community because of the minoritized identity of this community. They navigate significant psychosocial and socioeconomic stressors. However, there is evidence that their culture and pro-social values buffer the need to engage in stress responses. She seeks to study mechanisms that may play the role in better than expected health outcomes, a phenomenon known as the Hispanic health paradox. She especially focuses on cardiovascular disease, diversity, representation, and culturally sensitive approaches to research and therapy are of great importance to her. She is the lead researcher of Vigilant, a project which seeks to investigate the Hispanic health paradox in various Latin American sites. So as you can see, all of these people have experience in big team science and coordinating big groups of people, which I imagine sometimes is hard. So with that said, I will give 3 questions to you, and you can choose to take one or all 3 of them, and we can just have a discussions of what you think are the biggest barriers you have had as a leader of big team science, and you can look at how your intersectional identities might affected any barriers that you think might have affected you specifically because you were from the majority world, or if has anybody made you feel marginalized through the process, and how this impacted the work that you were trying to do. And this could be from either getting funding or collecting data, or even trying to publish any papers that they might have resulted from this. So you can jump in if you want to go ahead and jump in. I see Edie's already has her mic on. So if you want to go ahead and
It wasn't intentional though.
Okay. Well, if any
Yeah,
of
I
you
can
want
start though. I
okay,
don't mind.
perfect.
So yeah, I mean, I was early on board with the BTS because I was interested in replication attempts. As I do not, the context that I did my research from the beginning was a bit different than what was presented to us as universal. I always had this inner voice who said, like, this won't work with us. It needs to be replicated. Why is this presented as universal and so on? And when I saw that there is other people who share this conviction, I was very happy to help collect data and look into the generalizability of the findings and their robustness. And I was very lucky to be part of the BTS teams that were very egalitarian and transparent. So I was excited to learn. I mean, both the values and also the logistics of it, from like the way they were managed to basically the forms that they used. So I felt empowered in a way to start the project of my own. But I mean, as you might assume, the affiliation of my team was not like a proxy for our credibility. So when we initiated when we wanted to recruit collaborators for the team, we needed to have like a robust publishing, record of the particular topic that would convince people that we really know what to do and that we know how to publish and so on. So there was a step that was an additional step that I don't think that other people affiliated with more prestigious universities basically face. And I think that might be a universal thing that we shared. I'd be happy to hear from others, but that was one thing that I had to, make sure it happened before trying to recruit. And now when we are in the publishing stage, we are in the different set of problems, so to speak, because when we were publishing local results, what we got back from the reviewers was, Is it not a local peculiarity? How do we not know that it holds only for Serbia and so on? Why, if it holds only for Serbia, why that will be important? So we had to argue that even if it holds only for Serbia, it should be published and visible, but we also kind of, had a feeling that they might be universal. And now we have this huge database and we have very robust results. And now what we get back is, well, this seems very obvious. Why are you trying to, publish these obvious results? So at one point, we kind of used the previous review that we got when we were publishing only for Serbia to argue for our case why this is like important to do cross-culturally. So those are like two specific barriers that I wanted to highlight that we faced in this particular research.
Thank you, Iris.
Thank
Does
you.
anybody else want to jump in?
Yeah, I can. Yeah. So so I think like one for us with the Latin American Genomics Consortium, being that we are now like we've grown from like 25 to almost like over 175 members. I think it's really important for like especially like leadership, et cetera, to not serve as gatekeepers, right? And to facilitate any of the barriers that were in place already, right? Like biocolonialism, et cetera. So I think always be it that it's the consortium and its structure, it's serving to facilitate access and to expand participation, right? Both of the communities, like the research subjects and communities that we serve, and the investigators and like trainees that are participating. And I think that one of the barriers, or in terms of the intersectional identities, I think the motivation to like get this, like to get together with other people, to see it, to have it come together and create the LAGC came from the fact that, I'm from Puerto Rico, and like Puerto Rico, there's like not a lot of genomics, especially when we started, not a lot of genomics research happening. And it's because like the students don't know that much about it, right? Like there's not that much access to resources. And so understanding that and knowing how that is across Latin America, that's sort of the motivation that was in place to seek out all these other investigators to make this happen. And like seeing it as an imperative that we get together and create like a structure, a consortium to kind of bring together resources, knowledge, and the networks. And I think what, in terms of the issue is like making other people listen and to you and like being vocal about how important this is. I think that I'm thankful that, we were able to find like mentors and within other networks to facilitate this, but that is definitely a barrier. Like, it's not like we're the first people to be like, oh, I think we should do this. There's a lot of people that were trying to, move the science in that direction. And so I think one barrier is that, like having, are you being listened? Are you in a place where you are being listened to? Having access to some existing networks so that you can use those to expand, from those you can expand to other networks and reach other folks. And so, sometimes it's easier than others to be listened in terms of like being surrounded by people who will, make the connections that you need to for this type of collaborations happen. But that's not always the case. And so I think like maybe, if I hadn't been in a place with like a mentor that could hear me out and make this happen and give me some resources, like applying for some funding that helped us kind of like seed like the idea, then it would have maybe taken longer, or it wouldn't have happened at all, because there have been other attempts before to make something like this happen. And having the bandwidth, I think many times that's the issue, right? Like with having so many responsibilities, especially for folks that are in Latin America, teaching, like all these other administrative duties that can take time away from being able to put into some of these efforts. So, yeah.
Yeah, and there's the added barrier of you need a lot of funding to be able to do genomics.
Absolutely.
You can't, and like and I've been on on both sides. Sorry, I like jump in on being on the psychology side of like, okay, well, I think I could do this by donating my time and just being a volunteer. But in genomics, you can do that, but then you need thousands and thousands of dollars to be able to analyze data. So there's like an added barrier of somebody, a funding agency of wanting to give you money to do this. And when you're in Latin America, you for genomics, you need samples of like thousands. And in Latin America, maybe you can get funding for like 300. And then so you just kind of have to do different methods of meta-analytic methods to be able to bring all of this together. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
I was not part of the panel, but does Ade, Amelia, do you guys want to jump in and say something?
Yeah, if you want, can you hear me? So,
Yes.
yes. Okay.
You can,
Yeah,
yeah,
so
you can go first.
Okay. So I think we can overemphasize the role of money in research. And this showed up, especially when you're from a low middle income country like Nigeria. So it's very important that you know where the funding, where you can get funding to do research, unless you end up doing like a small scale single author kind of research that's sort of like more affordable or easier to just run these studies, small studies, and get publication for. But when it comes to like a big team science, this large scale study, it requires much more sort of like funding. Part of my experience that I feel is better is the funding part. Sometimes we have people from the US have this sort of big team science study and just ask somebody in Africa, a researcher in Africa, and say, can you help us run this study? Part of the first that comes to mind for someone like this is, do I even have funding to be able to run this at all, to collect data? So this it's a huge barrier, and sometimes maybe because of they don't want to look bad, they sort of not want to talk about the funding parts, you know. So I do always encourage that the number one thing is part of the barriers is funding. Aside from that, I think we still need a good scientists in Africa. Because a lot of them, they have limited knowledge about some things that we did discuss. Of course, their research area can differs in a way, or how they approach research or methods to differ, and maybe they need some sort of like training to build up expertise in. It's a different area, you know, to able to participate or contribute to research coming from the United States or, you know, or Europe. Also, there are we have poor facilities, internet, simple, just internet, you know, it's just, I say it because it's just internet, but this could be like a big barrier for some of us from low and middle income country, because some people struggle with this to subscribe or even get a computer to even start working on something. So for example, we ask people to do translation, and when you give it to them, some of them will not tell you like, well, I can't do it because it's not like I can't do it, but because I don't even have a computer something to open this document and do it. So these barriers I think they are like open. At the same time, we have to keep discussing it so that people from other clients from other part of the world can understand that the challenges from people from low and middle income countries. And if I will add to that, is the issue of workload. I mentioned a lot of this. We have very few teachers, you know, lecturers working in the university. Like it's always like a shortage of staffs, and that means they have little time for research. So when you have more additional work, that it becomes more difficult, and they struggle with time. You know, so there is heavy workload, and at the same time they have a lot to do, and they struggle with this. So for me, these are like the key we not often overlook, because we know we have this, but these are like for me the main barriers directly, you know, from a researcher working in the low and middle income country. So yeah. Yeah, that's it for me. Yeah. for now.
Nadia, you're muted.
We can you okay.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Ade. I was just saying that if they give us a whole hour, we can like air all of our grievances. But yeah, what you're saying is something that happens in Mexico too. Like sometimes we don't have internet. We have incredibly high workloads. Many of the institutions are more teaching institutions, and we're slowly moving towards research institutions, but still the workload is incredibly high, and the amount of time that you have to do purely research is very limited. And I think the amount I don't think a lot of people understand the amount of effort that you need to collect 200 participants in Latin America or in Africa, or other regions in the world, versus you just tap into a student pool and you get 200 in like half a day. And so it is very different. So thank you, Ade, for bringing those things up. Amelia?
Yeah. Yeah, I can relate so much to what everyone has been saying so far. I think I've been like in this time I've been reflecting on like how my identity influenced my experience, and specifically what influenced like me wanting to do big team science. And I think given that I was born in Mexico, I did research in Mexico during undergrad, that gave me like this unique perspective of like what not to do while I am pursuing my PhD here in the United States. I think it is important to take advantage of the structures that are in place, like those participant pools that we have, but also being mindful that if I'm going to be conducting a study in Latin America like I'm doing now, that I can't forget what my experience was, and acknowledging those barriers that are present in these Latin American sites. So yeah, one of the things that we ran into was participation, like very different forms of recruitment and very different forms of accessing participants. But also having to educate the US team in how research works in Latin America, and how we need to ensure that not because the measures are in Spanish, that doesn't mean that they're adequate, or that we should be using those measures to measure different constructs that we were interested in. So kind of like in explaining the translation process, because we ended up translating one of the measures, explaining that to the team too, and educating them on how does it work to translate a measure, why it's important that we all get together as a team and have different perspectives, and that we talk about it, and that we test it, and in general, like justifying why it's important to not only focus on what we were observing as a Hispanic health paradox that's happening in the US, but why it's important to see if it replicates in other countries, or if it works differently, why it works differently. I think my role has been a lot of like educating my team here in the US to kind of like understand those things. Because I had that experience during undergrad, and I can kind of see when my Latin American collaborators like raise some issues of the methods of this study, and I can see where they're coming from. But then again, like educating my team and educating my research assistants, and honestly, that's also being one of the strengths, because now these amazing research assistants are going onto their PhDs, and now they have that perspective, and now they have that experience of doing a big team science project. So now there's other people out there that may do it. So yeah, that's something I've been thinking about in terms of barriers.
Yeah, I think that's really good. I think one of the other things that both of you brought up is that when you ask people to translate, it's not just like, here you go, it's done. You have to make sure that it's culturally adapted as well, and that people, like Paola is from Puerto Rico and I am from Mexico, it's not the same Spanish. And you have to ensure that there is a neutral Spanish that we're both understanding. And there's different regions in the world that maybe speak French, but maybe it's not the same French. And so understanding that that may be different. And I think something that Amelia brought up is super important, that that collaborators from the US and Western Europe need to be educated as well. It's not just us that need to be educated on how things are done in one place. You also need to know how things are done in other regions of the world. So with that said, thank you. They were all great contributions to this. So I kind of want to move on to more positive things. What do you think were things that helped you, that uniquely helped you because you were from the majority world to be able to do big team science? Can you share like an experience that was encouraging? Is there something in the process that you were uniquely posed because of your background? Were there any happy surprises that you would like to share? And what can researchers from high-income countries or the minority world learn from you and your team that can maybe help big team science as a whole? And we can go in the same order, or you can just jump in if you just want to jump in.
Anyone want to jump in? Okay, so I'll try to be brief. So when I thought about the like unique opportunities, or what made me like more qualified or felt more competent because of the context that I was coming from, the first thing I could think of is like some kind of epistemic sensitivity that was obviously lacking from the partners coming from, let's say, the minority or the Western world. From the beginning, as I said, when I read the research, I had a problem with the postulate of universality that I didn't see there, and I was way more aware of different set of biases from the theory to the methodology that were like kind of ingrained in the science and research efforts. So once I was confident enough, I wasn't at the beginning, I started, vocalizing those issues. And at the beginning, there was no sensitivity to it, but I'm happy to say that was kind of very slowly and gradually changing. So I find the situation to be way better than at the beginning. And also, I learned recently that Serbia is considered like a semi-peripheral country. I didn't know whether I should be happy or offended or what. So, I mean, we're somewhere in the middle. Anyhow, I think like what it's meant by that is that we were exposed to, certain practices, but we also were at the same time under-resourced. So what was seen as our unique, skill was to manage to do the research with little or very or zero resources, basically. So do more with less. And the collaboration that I put together, basically I didn't have funds for data collection, so it was zero resources. And I'm in a way very happy that we managed to collect data and that people were ready to, to give us the confidence, the credibility that we asked for. But at the same time, I don't want to romanticize this. Okay, so I mean, it's something that we had to do, but still it's not the way to do science, and it's not sustainable on a large scale. So in order to be competitive, we need to have funds. So there is that. I mean, I see that as an issue, and the way that we are seen by the Western partners. So, you can manage with less. So that's something that we also need to push back a little bit. Yeah, I mean, that is kind of an opportunity and the way I learned to do things, and I have this special skill set. But I mean, at the same time, I want to say that we need to be very careful when we think about this as solely the opportunity. Did we lose Nadia?
No,
Oh, you're here. I
No.
don't see you anymore. Okay, okay.
I can, and I'm happy to go next. Oh no, it's like Nadia, unless you have something to say, like
No, no, it's
Okay.
Latin America, so there's always like interruptions here and there.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I think like thinking about this, I think one of the things that's helped for the consortium is the personal connections, right? Like there were some existing networks already of investigators when we started. You know, there are some shared values and culture, even though there are also unique culture context for each of the countries, as well as Latin Americans in the US. So I feel like there's like a fraternidad, like a, you know, like a sense of community that has facilitated getting this consortium off the ground and like expanding it through the years. And I think like a great example, something that kind of happened in parallel, well, there was a specific effort to focus on obsessive compulsive disorder, where there's like this large group of investigators that have gotten together and have over the past 5 years, and that they've been able to collect samples from like 5,000 subjects all through Latin America. They have a really broad representation, and the way the Latino OCD, the studies, it's called, the way that it really came together is that all these leaders in their own countries that were mainly on the patient care and treatment side of things, they kind of knew each other because, you know, OCD is like a more homogeneous community versus like looking at all psychiatric disorders. So they were already connected with each other through like conferences or courses, et cetera, and really took advantage of that connection that was already there, that network, and just expanded that network, provided resources also to them. So provided trainings in person and remote to like expand patient care, for example, like that specialized to different types of, you know, in the case of OCD manifestation. They've had like their own conference for like the past 5 years. So like it's just gotten stronger, the connection between them. And in their case also, they've been really good at having this heterogeneous network that includes people that do genetics, psychology, therapists, and like social media, like patients lived experience who are advocates and very active in social media. So I think that being able to recapitulate that, so like the opportunity and what's facilitated, it's like sort of like the sense of community for seeing this through. And I think that's what we want to also keep using, you know, like taking advantage for in the future. So how can we continue to use our personal connections as we're maybe expanding focus and adding more psychiatric disorders in our case, or if we're wanting to get into other areas, the chances there. And in our case too, in the genomics world specifically, because this was sort of to the side for a long time, there's opportunities for people that do methods development, right? Like to, and so to have more of a, you know, try to reduce the brain drain and then bring in like courses and connect to trainings and et cetera, so that you can have more methods and analysis that can help to study those populations that will have, you know, that will benefit many other people beyond Latin America. So I think there's like, you know, growth is an opportunity, right? And as well.
thank you, Paola. Ade, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I'll just follow the list. So in terms of impact, maybe 3 things that stands out for me is like, you know, it was so rewarding to see African researchers, you know, getting involved in victim science. I mean, we are still trying to get more of them into familiarizing themselves with victim science, but my project is such that it's a replication, and I contacted a lot of African researchers, you know, some of them are reluctant. They don't want to get involved in that. They don't know what it means in the first place to do this kind of projects. But with time, we're able to encourage a lot of them. And that's linked to the second one. We did like a capacity building in open science, something as simple as pre-registration, having your own, creating an open science framework accounts, so these are for me like very encouraging and impactful. They are little training stuff, but it goes a long way to introduce African researchers to open science, because for me, open science is one of those ways that you can almost equalize the playing ground for an African researcher and somebody from the US or Europe. Also, we're able to create a network of colleagues across Africa, Europe, and so on. In terms of maybe something that is unique to my experience that I'm disposed to is most of the replication studies, especially because are like online survey. And sometimes if you don't have the experience of paper and pencil test, I don't know, maybe we still have that in the US, because I see a lot of online surveys. And in Nigeria, for example, we still use a lot of paper pencil questionnaire. So just for that, my experience in doing that, when I asked people to do online study, they started to like say, can they adopt some sort of style, like a hybrid kind of situation where they can have paper pencil, or they can have a system set up somewhere and somebody will come and take the test today. So I was able to relate with that. It's just a unique experience, and what I'm disposed to able to guide them on the best way to go about collecting data. Maybe the surprises would be, I was surprised to see a lot of research outside non-African researchers that are interested in replicating African effects. So it was a surprise. I was like, yeah, well, this is interesting. Like, this is something we want to know what is happening in Africa. What are Africans thinking about this particular research, or so it was encouraging for me, and I was surprised about that. Maybe so the last one is what can researchers from high-income countries learn from the study? I will say two things. One, it's glaring that there is a clear dichotomy between what African researchers are interested in and researchers from the global north and global south. Like, because we ran a study and we see like it's more, if I would put it, like something like teenage pregnancy is not something that is common to people from the north that want to look at, but this is like heavy, it's almost like the top priority for an African researchers. So it's important for people from the global north to expand research ideas, especially if you want to do a replication and you want to involve somebody from a low middle income country, because most of their research focus are like to have problem solving. They want to solve problem. They are less on theoretical sort of ideas, but they have issues to solve and they have limited funding, and so they push for research that can help them solve problems, something like malaria, to those kind of situations, how to take people out of poverty, and others called how to reduce corruption. So these are issues that you see that come up a lot instead of theoretical issues that we find or maybe common in the North America. Another thing they can learn from what is the study selection procedure. Most times, people that replication from like big team science ideas, something like the PSA. I was involved with the PSA and some PSA affiliated studies. Most times they just pick studies and with little contribution from local researchers, even if they want to do that in Tanzania, for example. They don't really go and ask people or ask them to, their opinion about a study. So they just pick up a study and say, can you run this in Tanzania? Is it good for, and that's it. So the best way to go for me, and this is what we are, the procedure we go by, is to go at least during the process of study selection, have like a bottom-up evaluation of the effects or the claims that you want to, replicate. And that gives you an idea if it's something that they feel is feasible, applicable, or something they can adapt, or something they are interested in. So these are, these are our own idea for this. And it really worked out. We're able to get everybody on board, have researchers that are interested in that, and they feel that these studies are interested for their countries, both from Africa, both from Europe, across board. We're able to have this consensus about what study to go for. Yeah. So that's my thoughts.
Thank you, Ade. Amelia?
Yeah, I guess for me, the unique opportunities that I experienced through leading this study is definitely the possibility to do cross-cultural comparisons, given that we have collaborators from different regions in Latin America. And I think one of the most impactful things about doing this study is having the opportunity to elevate those voices of those who might be underrepresented, like the collaborators in the team, but also research assistants. Both of them were bilingual Mexican American first gen students. So being able to elevate their voices and teaching them how to do big team science and having them have that experience to carry forward. So then kind of like planting that seed of like, we can do big team science and we can collaborate with other people. And honestly, like teaching them to take advantage of the structures that are in place here in the US, but also take advantage of their unique position as bilingual and having them think deeply about issues that may come up in other countries doing research. That was very impactful. And again, the experience of like educating the US teams and bringing that awareness of things are done differently in other places, and this is how we can help, or this is how we can address the issues that were coming up. So I think that was a very an amazing opportunity, and I learned so much from doing this.
Thank you, Amelia. So we have now 15 minutes to try to see how we can make this better. So how can we advance or improve the way that things work right now in big team science? Are there any tips you would like to share with low and middle income country scientists who want to start their own big team science efforts? Are there any things you would have liked to know before you started? Are there suggestions you would like to give scientists from high income countries or consortia to increase support for low and middle income country scientists who wish to take more leadership roles? Do you have any other suggestions to promote more inclusive and equitable big team science? And these are like super big questions. So, this is like the $1 million question. So take one and or two and see how we can slowly try to improve this. And again, maybe whichever order you want to take, but I think we have a flow now from the order we had. So if you want to go ahead and start, Edis.
Yeah, okay, I can start, but we can like maybe discuss more at this final stage, so feel free to jump in. One thing that it's important, and I found it really useful, is to build a local team that's also sensitive to, open science efforts, to need of transparency, to the whole movement that's happening outside. So you can build, like you can form, so to speak, and recruit new young scientists with like enough confidence and enough knowledge to join themselves and to have this experience of being part of this larger collaborative team. And they came back with their own skill set, which kind of helped me, rely on them. So they were resource, on their own. So I think that's something that really, really helped. So cultivate this climate of, openness, transparency, and egalitarian norm within whichever work environment you're into. So that's something that really, and young people are very open to that, I would say. Like, it's easy to cultivate those because they come naturally. So, I mean, they're all for egalitarian norms and transparency, so not so difficult to have them on board. And also to pick up from what Ade was saying, I think it's also important to cultivate this local to global knowledge transfer. So to try to persuade collaborators with, more prestigious affiliations or more resources and so on, that your local research is worth exploring, it's worth investigating, it's worth even, investing into. So that's something that's really, really hard. So that transfer, it's something that's painstaking and takes a lot of time, but I think that's the only way basically to build cumulative science, right? So try to test the local findings and try to persuade them that they're like worth looking into. So that's something that we are, and also like encourage people coming from the same environment to be vocal about it. I'm doing my best to empower young people to be brave enough to have a voice in this way. So that's something that I think it's very, very important to do that. And I'm happy to see that it's becoming a norm, at least in these low and middle income countries, like to just try to do that. I know it's very difficult and we are like struggling, but I think it's important, like not only to build sensitivity to local context, right? So that's also something that's lacking, but it's kind of improving, and that's what I like addressed earlier. But to for researchers coming from richer countries and more prestigious universities to take interest in your research as well, not only in your interpretation of their research or like the modifications or adaptations that you can do to the survey or whatever like the project is, but also to have like curiosity about the locally specific findings and whether they should or could be generalized and so on. So I think it goes both ways, but we need to push for it, right?
Yeah, I agree. Like, I think it's kind of in kind of commonality, right? Like in terms of like for us, like if we want to do any like community participatory research related to psychiatric disorders, that expands just from like a genetic collection to like understanding like the measures that are used, the local context, if we want to look at like environmental and gene interactions. Like that effort has to be led by local leaders, right, who are in queue with the, they're connected to their communities that understand the context, but also they should also get another benefit out of there, right? Educational, for example, or training, right? Like, and that's one of the things that we would like to expand, right? Like, I think there's a lot of local educational opportunities and trainings in genomics. There's just like pretty vast, right? Like, so you have like from collection to analysis, interpretation, all of that. And there's not enough of these, like, for example, like courses, right, that are offered locally, that are hands-on, for example, for one specific aspect of it, for data analysis. And that's one area that we would like to expand. We've been able to use funds in the past to sponsor some like members in the consortium to travel to our main conference, or we've been able to organize a course at one of these conferences where we were able to sponsor a bunch of participants. But being able to do this at scale regularly in more than one place, right? Like with covering many areas of research, I think that's the way. Like there should be a lot of tangible benefits, right, to engagement and participation. So yeah, I think always seeing the network as a resource for knowledge, resources, contacts, mentors, but also that the benefit should be locally. And I think that in terms of suggestions, I mean, one of the things that we try to get the word out there after like surveying our members is just the disparities in terms of we talked about funding for research, but like stipends for graduate students and graduate assistants, salaries for faculty, and just how much of a barrier it is to participating like conferences, right? Like if there's not a real adjustment of the cost. In Latin America, many of the countries are not necessarily considered LMICs, but definitely the faculty and grad students don't earn enough to be able to participate in majority, in like conferences, in international conferences. And so I think we've been very like continuously like telling like powers that be, just like the differences in salaries, the differences in stipends, to to keep that in mind when deciding where to organize conferences, what is going to be the cost of the conference. And that's very small, right? That's like a small part of the research, but I think it's something that is also small in terms of like what we can do in terms of like voicing this as a concern. And in terms of like, I think like people that are well-resourced should be just very open always to serve as mentors and to facilitate connections for either younger trainees that are in these settings, and do it in a selfish manner, right? Like not expecting anything in return. And I think we've seen that a lot in terms of like people being very good about giving their time, who are in many different places when we've asked for like to serve as mentors, to serve as speakers, to be resources. We've gotten a lot of good response in our area of psychiatric genetics, but I think this needs to be something that it's like wide, across the field, and also not expecting anything back, right? Basically, right? It should be like a part of service to the community.
Thank you, Paola. Ade?
Yeah, so I think my thoughts are similar to what Iris and Paola have mentioned. The open science idea is key, because that can, we have young early career researchers and younger researchers that really wants to get involved in research, and open science is a way to to bring them in. And maybe just to tie everything together, one of the concepts that I do try to advocate for is train the trainer approach. If you train researcher in victims that like involved in it, and advise Africans of the family, they are part of the global research, or something like a joint grant application, something like encourage that they feel they're part of the process, and they have networks of people outside Africa, and they are ready to listen to them. In terms of making all this more inclusive, and this is going to be a long shot, is to have them researcher co-lead, be intentional about it, that you want them to co-lead or co-design, sort of like a research, just send invitation to them, invite them. Do you want to be a co-lead of this a study, or do you just want to co-design like a design, like a method, and then they begin to open up and warm up to the idea of victim science, and they want to. It's something that is a personal experience. I've seen a lot of researchers that I've worked in the last 5 years, African, and they say like they are even more open. I say I think what's happening in the PSA, we want to be part of it. So this is for me the way to go, to encourage them. Sorry, Light, you see what we Light's power. Outage. So this is what this is a common experience. Yeah. So just to tell you how the challenges and we go through. Yeah. But I hope you can see it. Okay, they've restored the power. So yeah. So that's just my own opinion about it. And for victim science initiatives, something like the PSA, they in a way have to be intentional about inviting them to do a specific stuff, let them feel valued. And I think from there they can take it up and invite others to be part of the victim science family. Yeah.
Thank you, Ade. Amelia, we have about a minute or two left.
Yeah, I just want to say I echo what everyone said, and I like that some of you mentioned the trainee aspect, and that was the only thing I would add. Of course, this is coming from being a trainee, but I think my suggestion would be to have more people like me, more like international students who have this perspective of what doing big team science could be like. And not only like international students, but also in general, having a very representative group in your research team. If you're doing research in certain populations, well, having someone who is from that community, and again, increasing that representation and having more people that look like me that have had the opportunity to do research in these countries. So that's all.
So we have 1 minute for me to do the closing. We can stay a little bit longer if we want to, but first of all, I wanted to thank all 5 of you for taking the time. I know it's late where Iris and Ade are, and it's early for us here in the western part of the US, and Paola's probably in the middle of something. We have a conference next week. So I really, really, really want to thank all 5 of you of giving your experience. This has been really enlightening. I really think that the big focus here is putting a lot of focus on the J part of the Jedi, of the justice of it. And I think it's what you are all highlighting here of this of being reciprocal, of training the trainers in order to empower people to do better. And having more equitable collaborations, and not only because it's morally imperative to do it, not only because we want to have everybody to be able to do it, but because we care for science and because we care about science. So this is the only way that we can actually improve science. But maybe from Amelia's research, we can see that there's there's something about the Hispanic health paradox that can help everybody else. Maybe from Ade's research, we can like understand teen pregnancy worldwide, or from Edie's, we can understand what is that I did learn a lot from the study, that what prevents people of not taking these questionable health practices. And from Paola, we can find targets that can help people all over the world. So it's not just because let's be diverse because because we want to be included. It's let's be diverse because this will help everybody. So again, thank you all that came to the panel, and thank you all that are watching it later on. And thank you, the 5 of you, and let's hope there's many good things to come later. And hopefully I see you all pretty soon again. I'm gonna stop recording.